Yedidya Grant, I'm sitting in front of a glazer. So we're on Memhe on base 45B, the second wide line. It starts Amar Meimar. So a Meimar said, he quoted Rav Nachman that said, plus the Kani Avi. There are three pipes in the near the lung area. Chad, one of them Parish Laliba goes towards the heart, Chad, and one of them Parish Lerea. One of them goes to the lungs. Chad Parish Lekavda, and the other one goes towards goes to the liver, is connected to the liver. The Reya, so they each have are disqualified with certain holes and punctures in them. So the question is, what size are those holes and punctures going to disqualify them? The Reya, the pipe that goes to the lungs, the trachea. The puncture in that is the same size as that of in the chorea, the same size of that as in the lung, which is any amount. The kavda, what would disqualify the pipe of the liver would be the same as kikavda, like the liver. In other words, even if most of it's missing, provided that even if most of it's missing, it would still be okay. Yeah. The liba, the one that goes to the heart. Pligi mar barchia. Pligi. They argue on that. Yeah, that's the machlokas, the disagreement we had earlier. That Rav said it's any amount, and Shmuel said that it's most of it has to be there. Yeah, that's the disagreement. Mar barchia masni ipcha. Mar barchia learns this differently, not with different measurements for each pipe. He says the trachea, the reya kikavda, is going to have the same disqualification as that of the liver, which is, even if most of it's missing, it's still going to be kosher. The kavda, the pipe of the liver, is going to have the disqualifications as that of the lung itself, kireya, which is any hole in it would disqualify it. The liba and the pipe of the heart, that's going to be a disagreement, the same disagreement as before, whether it's any amount or whether it's rov. The liba pligi, that's the disagreement. So we have Rav Chia Azlar, Rav Chia Bar Yosef. So he went and he repeated this teaching. Amar Lashmaiti, he told his teaching of Rav in front of Shmuel, Kamei the Shmuel. Amar Le, and Shmuel responded to him when he heard what Rav said. Rav said that the disqualification of the pipe is any amount, and he said, if that's what Rav said, he doesn't know anything about the disqualifications of trephus. He couldn't have held like that. He felt it was not a valid opinion. Okay, so now the Mishnah we quoted earlier. We said earlier that if the one of the disqualifications of the animals, if the spinal cord broke, snap. So Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught that chuta shedra, if the spinal cord nifsak ruba, it snapped, and most of it, the majority of it snapped. That's what Rabbi holds is going to be the disqualification. There's another opinion. Rabbi Yaakov says afilu nikev, even if there's a puncture in it, which is much smaller than that, it's not even majority. It's a little still disqualified. Rabbi, but Rabbi himself, when he was actually ruling on this, the ruling came before him. He actually ruled like Rabbi Yaakov, that even a much smaller amount than the majority will still disqualify it. Amar, when Rav Huna said, "Ein halacha ki Rabbi Yaakov," we don't rule like Rabbi Yaakov. We only disqualified if the majority of it is snapped, is detached. The kamaruba. So what is the majority? How do we define the majority? Rav Amarov Oro, the majority of the membrane around the spinal cord. And there are others that say Rov Mocho, the majority of the inside of the nerve tissue inside the spinal cord. Mandam Rov Mocho, and the one that said that if the majority of the inside is severed, then it's going to disqualify. Kolshigan, then definitely he would feel that if Rov Oro, the outer membrane is severed, would definitely disqualify. But the one that said that according to the opinion, according to the opinion that said Rav Oro, that it only disqualifies if the majority of the outer skin is severed. Then if it's going to be, but if the inside severed without the outside, Rav Mochamai, then what would be the case over there? We don't know. So we're going to try to prove what the ruling would be in that case. Tashma Damar Niyuli said, and he quoted Rav Huna that said, Rubo Shamru Rov Oro, the majority that they taught by the spinal cord that disqualifies the spinal cord is the majority of the skin. and moach zeh, and the inside it does not them lomar malav lomar. It doesn't make a difference whether what the situation is over there. So you see from that even if the inside is severed, since the outside is intact, it will not disqualify. Rav Nassan bar Rav and Havi Yosef Kamei Rav. This Rabbi Nassan bar, the son of Avin, was sitting in front of Rav, and he checked Badak Rovar. He checked this question of the disqualification of the animal by the spinal cord came in front of him, and he checked only the majority of the membrane outside around the spinal cord. And then he wanted to check Vikabadik, and he wanted to check Birov Mocha in the inside to see if the inside was intact. Amrlei, and he said, so Rav told him, Imrov Orokaim, if the majority of the membrane is intact, it doesn't make a difference what the inside is going to be like. It's going to be kosher, it's going to be good because the outside is intact. Amar Rabba Bar Chana. Rabba Bar Chana said, he quoted Reshuv and Levi, Nismarich, so regarding spinal cord, if Nismarich, if it's softened, then it's possible, it's disqualified. Nismas Mace, if it dissolved, then puzzle is also going to be disqualified. So the Gemara asks, what's considered hamracha and veizohim hamsasa? What's the definition of softening? What's the definition of disintegrating? Hamracha. So the Gemara says that hamracha, softening, means kol shenishbach yakisuna. If it pours out like from a jug, if it literally pours out and it's so soft that it can pour. Masmasa. What does it mean when it's disintegrated? Kol she'eni yachal lamod. In other words, it's not as soft, but it just is unable to stand on its own. So then now that we see that not being able to stand can disqualify the spinal cord. So Rabbi Yirmiyah asked, let's say it's not soft, but it's heavy and thick, and it's not able to stand because of that. What would be the ruling over there? Would it disqualify or not? Take it. We don't know. It stands. We don't have an answer to that question. So Beira of Amri, from the house of Rav, they ruled that nismas meis pasul. If it disintegrated, it's going to disqualify it. Nismas meis kosher. But if it just a lower level disintegrating part of it disintegrated on its own, then it's going to be kosher. Meisivei. So they asked on that. Rishim ben Elazar Omer behemish and nismaz meiz mocha, an animal that part of its brain disintegrated on its own, it's going to be treifa, not kosher. So but Rav, we just quoted that it would be kosher. And now we have this Mishnah or Bryce that says not kosher. It seems to contradict it. So the Gemara answers no. That was an incorrect gear. So the incorrect version. It's supposed to read behemish shenismas meis. An animal that the moach was completely disintegrated, and that's going to be not kosher. Itmar, and we learned that was when it completely disintegrated. That's going to be not kosher, but not when it only partially fell apart on its own. The Gemara asks, is that true? Ini, is that true? Levi have a Yosef be Mesusa, but Levi was by be Mesusa, and Chaziel he saw a certain person, the Tarila Reisha. He was sitting in a certain place, and he saw this person with a crushed head. And he pointed out, you see this person's head his brain, the spinal, there's going to be spinal issues, it's partially crushed. Like what we just said is not a full disqualification. It's still a kosher. So we're going to assume he's pointing it out for a reason. Why was he pointing it out? Wasn't he pointing it out to prove lav delochai that he can't live? It's considered a disqualification, which would disqualify animals as well, that he's unable to live as a result of that. Here too, if it's only partially disintegrated on its own, it should still disqualify the animal. And how can you say that it's going to be kosher? It's not going to disqualify it. So now we answer Amar Abai. Abai responded, no, he wasn't trying to teach us that the person's not going to live. He's trying to say Lomer She'ena Molad. He does not have the ability to have children because of that incident. Now the Gemara asks, so the spinal cord is problems with the spinal cord can disqualify the animal most of the way through. Until where? How far along the animal does it disqualify? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda quoted Shmuel. He said Ad Bein Parshas, until a certain area where it splits off into branches, and that area it can stand on its back legs, and it doesn't need this spinal cord fully. And even if it disintegrates in those areas, it's not going to disqualify the animal. Rav Dimi Bar Yitzchak, Rabbi Rav Dimi Bar Yitzchak, he wanted to go Have a kabay lamezel beichazai. He wanted to go to this place beichazai. Asa the kamei de Rabbi Yehuda, and he came there. He went to Rabbi Yehuda and he asked him. He wanted to know what this area between the splits is. Amar lechvi limar ben aparshas. Show me where this area is. Show me heicha. Show me where it is. Amar le. He said, Zil aisi legedi. Bring me a goat and I'll show you on the animal. Va'achvilach, and I'll show you. Aisi le. He brought him gedish meina, a fatty goat. Amar le beli atzvei. No, there's too much fat or you can't tell. It's too much. It's too absorbent. But Yedidya, and I can. It's not known. You can't show where it is. Isolate kachas. They brought him a lean one, a very small one. Amrle blitantvei. No, they're sticking out too much, and somehow you can't tell the area. The bone of the thigh is pushing into the meat, and it's attached, and you can't tell. It's so thin, you can't tell where it is. So he wasn't able to show him. But regardless, he said, Amrle ta'ag marchmar. I'll tell you the teaching that I got. I'll teach you. This is what he heard from Shmuel, that adachas treifa, the first branch, when it branches off, that's going to be, any disqualification there will be not kosher. Shlishis, but the third one, the third one will be kosher. Shnia, but the second one, there's 1, 2, 3 branches. The second one, I don't know what any of that. I don't know if it's going to disqualify there or not. By Rav Huna Bereder of Yoshua, Rav Huna asked. So when we said until the first one is disqualified, does that mean the first branch until the first branch? It doesn't mean including the area between the first branch and the second branch. So advad b'chlal, do we say the area between the first and second branch is included in that disqualification? Odilma ad v'lo ad b'chlal, or maybe it's only up until the first branch, but the area after that will not disqualify, even between the first and second branches. By Rav Papa asked him, so if you want to say that we don't include the area between the first and second branch, P parsha, let's say the area right at the beginning of the splinter where it branches off, that area right at the beginning. Mahu. What is the din over there? What is the rule? Do we rule that it disqualifies or not? And by your Yirmiyah, and on that we don't answer that, but we ask further. If you want to say, and even if you want to say that it includes between the first and second splinter, the second branch, then the splinter itself, the branch itself, where it branches off, the first branch, the whole spinal cord itself would disqualify up until the second branch. But the first branch itself, will one of these disqualifications of being dissolved in some sort, will that disqualify over there as well? And to that we try to prove. We bring a source that says Tashima, come here. We're going to try to prove it. We're trying to prove what the ruling is. A parsha tidon kibasar. The branch is judged just like the meat of the animal. My love, parsha rishon. So aren't we? And if it's like the meat of the animal, that would say just like by the meat of the animal, these disqualifications of dissolving doesn't apply. So too, by the branch. My love, parsha rishon. And aren't we talking about the first and second branches? And there would be no disqualifications even by the first branch. So the Gemara answers no. The shlishas, we're talking about the third. Lo shli, we're talking about the third branch, and over there we're not going to have any disqualifications. But by the first one, it could be that we would have that these things would disqualify it. So we haven't proved what the ruling would be in such a case. But ofa, so by birds, so till now we're talking about animals that have the spinal cords with the branches. But by ofa, by birds, Rabbi Yanai Omer Lamata Menagapayim, the spinal cord disqualifications in the spinal cord disqualified until below the wings. Reish Lakish Omer Ad Ben Agapayim, said until between the wings, not below the wings. It's a little higher up. Amar Ula, so Ula said Havaka Imna Kamei Ben Pazi. I was standing in front of Ben Pazi. And they brought in front of him to ask him about the disqualification of the bird. And he checked until between the wings, but not further. He felt that suffices. We're going to see if he felt that suffices. And then from the Nasi, the royal family sent him to come. The come and he got up and left. And he stopped checking it. So we don't know. We don't know if it's because he felt he did not need to check more, or it was because he left because the out of respect of the Nasi's family, he just left in the middle and he really didn't finish the job. So we can't really prove from that whether he felt disqualified further than between the wings, lower down, or not. So now we're going to discuss the disqualification of the liver. If the liver is missing, nitla kavid, if the liver was removed, it's going to be it's a problem. It's going to disqualify it. So the Gemara learns from that that we always say that if it's completely entirely missing, then it's going to disqualify it. But if anything else is left, then it's going to be kosher. It's not going to disqualify it. If anything's left, it's going to be kosher. Even though it's not going to be a kazai. It's not a full amount of an olive size, which is even though it's not a full amount of an olive size. But the Gemara asks, well, we learned about Tanan, but we have another source that says, Nitla kavid, if the liver was removed, and there remained from it a kazayis, share, it's going to be kosher. You see, you need an olive size. So how come the implication of our Mishnah would be that you don't need an olive size? So Amar Rav Yosef responded that, Lo kasha, that's not a question, Harab Chia, Harab Shimon. It's two different opinions. That one's Rav Chia, one's Rav Shimon be Barabi. Ki had Rav Chia zarek la Reb Shimon bar Rabbi matbila, because we see that Reb Shimon would throw it away and Reb Shimon bar Rabbi matbila, he would use it. So there's Reb Chia would throw away the liver, and therefore he felt it was not a vital part of the animal. So if it was missing the liver, if it was missing even less than a kazayis, he felt it wasn't as vital. And therefore, even if it's missing more than a olive size, even if it doesn't have an olive size, it has less than an olive size, it's still going to be a kosher animal. However, if Shimon Barabi matbil, he used to use it and he used it, and that shows that he felt it was a vital part of the animal. It was good. It was needed for the animal, and he feels that you need a full olive size of the liver in order for it to be considered kosher. V'simanach, and we'll bring a simon for this. A mnemonic to remember: Ashir and Mekamsin. The rich people are being stingy. In other words, Reb Shimon Barabi came from a royal family, came from a wealthy family, and he's the one that's making sure he uses the liver. So we're trying to remember that he's the one that says the liver needs to be a full olive size. How Pulmasa, there was an army that came. That's Pumpadisa. They came to the city of Pumpadisa. Arku Rab of Rav Yosef. So Rab and Yosef, they ran away. They felt it wasn't safe. As they were running away, Pagabahu, they met Rav Zera. Amalhu Arukai. He told them, Arukai Kazai Shamru B'Makamara. So he spoke to them, the people that you're fleers, Kazai Shamru, the olive size that they said, where does it have to be? In other words, we said olive size, according to one opinion, an olive size, the liver has to remain. Where does it have to remain? In the place of the gallbladder, where it's attached to the gallbladder. However, Rav Adu Barava felt that Amar Makam Sheichaya, he said that it should be in the place with the source where it's attached, the liver is attached, which is closer to the diaphragm. Amar Rav Papa. So he said, because of the two opinions, we want to try to satisfy everybody. Amar Papa Hilkach being in Kazais, Makamari, an olive size where it's attached to the gallbladder, and another Kazais from the being in Kazais, another olive size from Makam Sheichaya, from where it grows from. It's attached. By Rav Yirmiyah. So Rav Yirmiyah asked regarding the liver, Mislaket Mao. If you can gather together an amount, it's not all attached. You gather an amount that it adds up to an olive. Or and what would be the ruling over there? Would it disqualify or not? If it's like a long strip and it's not a full olive size in one area, but if you combine it, it'll be an olive size. There, what would you rule over there? Would it be kosher or not? Mao. By Ravashi, and Ravashi asked, Tazayis merudad, if it's Kedayis that's meruka, it's what?
Flattened.
It's flattened out, which is it's worse than like a strip. Do we combine that for an olive size or not? If the liver is mainly detached, then still it's like ripped out a little. It's still attached to its diaphragm. Mo, it's still attached a little bit. Mo, Amrle dildo zen yodem mo. I don't know what the what would be over here by this detached. Ilaman the Amar Makam. I don't know what you're talking about in this case. If you're talking about according to the opinion that says it has to be attached Makamara in the place of the gallbladder, it is attached over there to some extent. Ilaman Amar. If you're saying it's according to if you're talking according to the opinion that says Makam Shichai, it has to be in the place where it's attached. then ha'ika, it is there. It does exist there. So I don't know what you're saying that it wouldn't. Why would it be a problem? In other words, that we have it wherever we need to have it, so therefore it should be kosher. It shouldn't disqualify. Hariya shenikva. Along another disqualifications, if a lung got punctured, it's going to disqualify the animal. Rav Shmuel, Rav Asi, the Amri, Rav Shmuel and Rav Asi, they both say karmei. He said, "What's the hole is where? The hole is on the upper layer, the 2 layers in the lung. So if there's puncture in the upper layer, that's going to disqualify the animal." V'amri, there are those that say karma tata, the lower membrane. That's what matters. And if there's puncture in that, that's going to disqualify. Amar of Yosef, Bar Minomi, Yosef Bar Minomi quoted Amar of Nachman, that said, "V'simanach gave an imanik for this kituna devarda demancha beireya." There's like a red coating that the lung rests in. Devarda is like a rose which is red. Pshita. So we know it's simple that eating kavila of lung of tatah. If the upper layer is punctured and the bottom layer is not punctured, tatah making the bottom layer does protect it and it's not going to disqualify. Because based on the teaching of Rabbah, the Amar Rabbah Hai Reya, this lung, the iglid that it's peeled kahina and it looks now it's red, bright red, the kahina sumka, like a certain red date. Share it's still going to be kosher. Inkif tatah, if the bottom layer is punctured, then below kivila and the upper layer is not punctured, megan or lo megan. So we want to know if the upper membrane of the lung will it protect it or will it not protect? Yeah. Pligi, but Ravas, that's a disagreement. That's a argument between Rav Acha and Ravina. Rav Acha and Ravina Chadam or lo megan. One of them says it does not protect it, and the other one says megan, it does protect it. And with the final ruling is that megan, it does protect it. If there's only puncture in the bottom membrane and the upper layer is complete, then that would protect and it would be kosher. And then that's like the ruling like Rav Yosef. The Amr of Yosef, because we have another teaching of Rav Yosef. Hi Red the Avsha. If you have a ray that's making a noise, if you know where it's making the noise from, we can put on it gadfa, either a feather or a roka or a spittle, gila or some straw. And if you see it's bubbling from that space, treifa, it's going to be disqualified because we know that it has a hole there all the way through. Elo, and if not, kshera. And if there's no bubbling, then it's going to be kosher. It's not going to be disqualified. So we're going to infer from that. Sorry, we didn't get there. And if we don't know where it's making noise from, we want to figure out where it's making noise from. We bring a bowl, demaya of water, of demaya pshura, of lukewarm water. And we put the lung in that. We don't put it in hot water. The kavtzi, because it'll shrink the lung and it'll seal up the hole. We won't be able to tell where the hole is. And Bekriyalo, we don't put in cold water because it makes it hard. We put it in lukewarm water, and then we blow it up in the water. If it bubble, treifa, it's going to be disqualified. Vilo, and if not, kshera. Tata, why? Because we know tata inkiv ilolo. The bottom one has a hole in it, the top one does not have a hole in it. What's the noise that it's making? Zika the beni beniu. It's the wind is going between the two membranes of the lung. But as long as it's not coming out, it's going to be kosher. And that shows, like Rav Yosef we mentioned earlier, that if there's a puncture in the bottom layer and not on the top layer, it's going to be kosher. So Gufa, we're going to quote from the earlier, we just quoted a method we just quoted what Rava said. If the Rhea looks like this red date, then it's going to be kosher. Amar Rava, high red, iglid, if it's peeled off, kahina, sumcha, now it looks like this red date, share, it's going to be kosher. Amar Rava. So we have other, based on that we're discussing the color. Rava adds Reya Shadima, a lung that got red. That only part of it got red. We just said the whole thing's red, it's going to be kosher. Shadima Mixasa, if part of it got red, it's going to be kosher. Kula, but if all of it got a certain red, and then it's going to be treifa, not kosher. Rava. So yes, you say when part of it becomes red, why do you disqualify it? Mitzvah my time, the hadra bari, because it heals after that. So kula, when you have the whole thing's red, nami hadrabari, it also heals after that. Milotan, yadin we learn shar shkatzim masim. So we have by the most bugs and insects and stuff like that. if someone hits them and bruises them, it's not considered a wound regarding Shabbos when someone's not allowed to make a bruise, and if he does make a bruise and blood comes out, that's going to be you can't do that. That's going to be considered a bruise in Shabbos, which is not allowed. So he said it's not considered a bruise until until blood actually goes out. So if we're comparing it to those, then here too, then wherever the blood, whenever it gets red, it shouldn't make a difference where it gets red. In other words, it's coming out. It's coming out from inside. It'll get red, but it's the whole thing. It's all for the same reason. So what difference does it make if it's part of it or only all of it? It's something under the skin and it didn't puncture through yet. That red. In other words, if the red shows us, if we say the red only shows us that it's a puncture once it comes all the way through, then it doesn't matter how much of it's red. If you say it's going to be a problem, then even if part of it is red, it's going to be a problem. And if you say it's not a problem, then then even all of it shouldn't be a problem. And maybe you want to say lashmona shratz, and we compare the lung to a specific category of insects and small animals, which is the shmona shratzim, which have their special rules midamin Allah. So you want to compare it to that and say that, and based on that only part of it turning red should disqualify. The sanya over there we taught that nitzra adam, if the blood clotted alpha even though none of it left the animal. So you want to say, okay, so then over here, any part of it getting red, even under the skin, we don't see a puncture anywhere, should still disqualify. Then if so, you shouldn't wait for the whole thing to turn to clot red. Even a part of the lung also, if only part of the lung turns red, miksasanami should also disqualify. Rather, there's no difference between part of the lung and the whole lung, and however much of it's red, it's going to be okay. Rava said another teaching, Resh Yavsha, if the lung dried out, if part of the lung dried out, Resh Yavsha Miksasa, Treifa, it's going to be not kosher. The Kama. So how much is part of it? Amar of Papi Mishmei Rava, or Papi quoted Rava saying, Kadesha Tifrach Mitzvah, how much is considered dry? It has to crumble with his nail. He uses his nail and it can disintegrate because of that. Kiman. So is this like Rabbi Yossi ben Amishulin, the opinion of Rabbi Yossi ben Amishulin elsewhere that we say regarding a bechor? We have the firstborn animal. When he's born, it has special dinim, special rules that you have to treat it with a certain level of certain rules. You can't just do anything with it unless it gets a blemish. And once it gets a blemish, the rules are more lenient. So the one of the blemishes is the ear dried out, and the Mishnah over there discusses what's considered dry. So what's considered dry? Shem tinakev, the if will get a puncture, and no blood will go out from it. That's considered dry. Rabbi Yossi ben Amishulin says no. What's considered dry? That means when it'll crumble with the nail, with the fingernail, just like we said here. So it would seem to be that the opinion over there that says that what's considered dry by the lung, that would disqualify it. The opinion it would be Rabbi Yossi ben Amishulin in this Mishnah. But the Gemara says no, not necessarily, because afilu teim rabban, you can even say it's the rabbis over there. Gabe ozim nechar the kashalat beizika, by the ear of the firstborn. There's ear there, and the ear would stunt the healing process. It wouldn't heal that fast, and therefore it's going to disqualify it even when it just crumbles with the fingernail, and you don't have to wait until it gets so much the level of dry as the rabbis taught. But reya by the lung of reya the lokashalt be'avira, that there's no ear there, hadrabari, it can heal faster, and even though it's already nifrach b'tzipor and already crumbles with the fingernail, it would still be kosher according to the rabbis over there that taught by the ear of a firstborn would only be disqualified as dry. Would be already disqualified as dry. No, sorry, no. Sorry, the rabbis are teaching a lower level of drying. In other words, it doesn't give blood. Rabbi Yossi ben Amishulin says it's dry, a higher level of dry. And we want to say that the lung over here should be disqualified when it's is according to Rabbi Yossi ben Amishum, that opinion that it's disqualified only once it reaches the. Oh, 1 second. No, this is only. We want to say there's only the opinion of Rabbi Yossi ben Amishum that it's dry is considered once it crumbles with the fingernail. But the rabbis would say that it's already disqualified because it's doesn't give off blood. And I say no, not necessarily, because the rabbis are talking about the ear, and the ear is exposed, and therefore it's going to have a harder time healing. But by the lung, maybe it could be even drier because it's inside and it's protected, and it would have easier time healing. Okay. V'amara v'hayre the kaima gildi. A lung that's peeling, there's many layers peeling off. Ukmi, or if it says black spots, chazuta, if it had many colors in it, shira, as long as they're kosher colors, it's going to be kosher. Amra meimar, mishmei derava, ein makifim bevui. So, if you have certain blisters on the animal that we're not sure that it punctured in the lung, the butcher's hand doesn't go in that area, and we're not sure whether this happened before the shechita, before this it got slaughtered, or afterwards. If it happened before, it's going to disqualify the animal. If it happened afterwards, it's still going to be considered good. So what we want to do is we want to make a similar thing. We want to make a similar blemish in the lung after this post shechita, after it's slaughtered, and see if it's similar to the first one. And if it's similar, then you could say, oh, it happened after it was slaughtered, and therefore it will be kosher. So what Rav is saying is, no, you can't do that. You can't compare the holes in the punctures into these two blisters to say it's kosher. Rava said another ruling that hani tarti unay the srich ladadi. If there are two lobes of the lung, thank you, the srich ladadi that are attached to each other, leis leubedika. You can't check. In other words, there's no way to check it because the attachment is because of a hole, and it's going to be considered not kosher. So regardless of what you do, it's not going to work. We only said this ruling that it's going to disqualify when it's not in the order. In other words, it has to be attached in a certain area of the lung here. But if it's attached what's considered keseder in order, then it will not be a problem. So let's maybe see a picture. Basically, on the lungs, there's a certain point that the top of it is the crease, and it folds over. So if it's attached, each lung is attached below the crease, then it's still going to be considered kosher. It's going to be kosher. But if it's any other part of it, it's going to be considered not kosher, and it's not. It's disqualified. Can't find it right now. Find the picture. If there are two blisters, they're right next to each other. And again, those two you cannot check it. It won't help to check it because we assume that those came because there was a hole there, and that disqualifies the lung. If you have one blister and it looks like two, then my sinan silu we bring a thorn, and we puncture it. It's in other words, there's one big one, but it looks like it's two of them. It's two blisters. So two blisters would be disqualified. One blister would be okay. So how do we discern whether it's one or two? We take this thorn, we puncture one of them. Then we pour it out through the one you punctured. And you see, if they pour straight through one, they pour out in that one hole. Chadu, it's considered a singular one. Ukshera, it's kosher. Vilo, and if it doesn't pour through that one, tartin and utrefa, it's going to be considered two blisters, and that's going to disqualify it because when there's two there, we assume that there was a hole there. V'amar Rava, and Rava said, there are 5 lobes to the lung. So now we're going to look at it when it's facing apaklap begavra, when the face of the animal is facing the person. Then there's going to be, and it's hanging from its legs, and it's facing the person. So they're opening it up. Apaklap begaver, the face is facing the person. Tlasim yamin, there are going to be 3 on the right side. Vitartim ismal, and 2 on the left side. He's talking about the smaller lobes, not the large, the 2 massive ones on the bottom. He's talking about the smaller ones. There are 5 of them, and there's supposed to be 3 on the right and 2 on the left. Chaser, if it's missing some, o yasir, or it has an extra one, o chalif, or it's switched the order. Let's say it's 3 on the left side and 2 on the right side. That's going to be treifa. It's going to disqualify. We have a story with Hahu Yiserta. There was a case of a lung with an extra lobe that came. The Sailuk made the came in front of the Asper Meramer. What would be the ruling in that case? Rav Acha Abava. Rav Acha was sitting on the doorstep of Meramer. Amrlei, and then when this person walked out with the lung, he got his ruling. Amrlei, my Amrlech, what did he tell you? Amrlei Achshura. He said Achshura. He told me that it's good, it's kosher. Amrlei Hadar Ayla Kamei. Go bring it back. Just make him check again. Amrlei Zil Aimalei. So he went in. Amrlei Zil Aimalei Laman Diyasva Abava. He said, go tell the one that's sitting on my doorstep. The ruling, we don't rule like Rava Biaseris with an extra. In other words, Rava had just said that an extra lobe would disqualify, and here he had an extra lobe, and he said it is okay. So he sent them back and he said, double check that. He said, no, we don't rule like that. We don't rule like that when there's an extra lobe. And that's provided. When do we say that it's okay, that it does not disqualify? When it's all in the order of the lobes. In other words, when the lobes are on the side of the lung and it looks like another lobe. In other words, if you didn't know what the number is supposed to be, it would look natural. It's attached in the same row as the other ones. Avul beni, but if it's another area, if it's sticking out from below the on the bottom of the lung, which is not supposed to be there, it looks strange, then it's going to disqualify treifa. Hau beni, there's a case of it coming out from the bottom of the lung. The Asla Kamedim Rashi, and they asked Rashi, they found another lobe coming out on the bottom, and they asked him, what would be the ruling? Is this kosher? Sabra Rashi Lamitra, he wanted to say it's not kosher, like we just said. No, this lobe is different. All the wild animals, all the animals that are outside, that not the domesticated ones, have it. Hachi Islu. They have this lobe. The Karlu Tabchi, and the butchers call it Ionisa Devarda. It's called like the small lobe. The lobe Devarda, like a rose, because it's red. And it's provided. When do we say this lobe is going to be okay? It's not going to be a problem. Hani mili megavai. That's going to be when it's on the inside of the animal. Aval agaba. But when if it's on the back of the lung, afilu ketar fadasa. Even if it's the size of a myrtle branch, it's still going to be disqualified. Yeah. Amar Rafram. So Rafram said, "Hi Rea Dami lo upsa." If you have a Rea that looks like an upsa, it's going to be not kosher. It looks like a piece of wood. It's going to be not kosher. So what does it mean? Looks like a piece of wood. Ikadamri b'chazuta. It had the appearance of it. Seems it's a similar, I guess, color. It looks like a piece of wood. Ikadamri. Then those that say begish, the note has the same texture as a piece of wood somehow. Ikadamri dinaficha. Those that say that it becomes white like a piece of wood. In other words, that's also talking about the appearance of it. Ikadamri depechiza. And also he's saying that it's hard like the wood. It has the texture of the wood. Thank you. And yeah, there's basically the same. There's different ways of explaining whether it's the disqualification of looking like a piece of wood is actually in appearance or in the texture. Vikadamri, and with other people say no, upsa means a completely different thing. The shiyad it's one big piece, and it does not have the splits of the lobes. It's all one big lump. Okay, yeah, I guess we'll stop here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Next level.
See the next piece is along.